up? Bud Elliott back again for another episode of the Nolecast. Bud, happy to be able to rejoin you here and look at a couple of really, I guess we're just going to recap the additions to the roster throughout the first transfer portal. Probably the what is rapidly becoming the second portal is almost becoming equivalent to the second signing day, in my opinion. Now, it's not as though there's not pieces, and there were some nice pieces last year at one position in particular, but it's so hard to predict that everybody really wants to get most of their business done in the first window, and with that closed, we'll be able to have a conversation about some of the pieces added and give an idea as to what the roster looks like post Portal 1.
Absolutely, man. Want to give a shout out off the top to Chad at Legendary 844 FSU Loans. 844 FSU Loan does an awesome job. 600 Nolecast listeners have decided to get their home loan with the Legendary team, and Chad just absolutely crushes it for us. So 844 FSU Loan is the number to call if you need a home loan or maybe a refi. Whatever you need, give him a shout, talk a little ball. I know he's excited about this upcoming season, as well as FSU looks to get back on track. So we talked defense last time. Let's just focus on offense today. Got a quarterback. Lose Croman Hoke to Mississippi State. The guy certainly, I was very high on him long term. I have reason to believe he had no interest in playing in a Gus Malzahn offense, honestly, and wanted to throw the ball more. So I can't begrudge him for leaving, to be honest. This is going to be a run first, run second, probably run third offense, and the quarterback they went and chose is a guy with whom Malzahn is very familiar with in Thomas Castellanos. What do you see in Castellanos?
Yeah, great little intersection of knowledge for Norvell and Gus. Obviously, a guy that Norvell famously wanted coming out of high school as a running back. I think he's I'm not saying 99 out of 100 or whatever, but I think he's as good of a fit for the offense that you're going to be running as you could hope to have, particularly in this class. He's a guy that's, kind of tailor-made for what you're trying to do. Again, I'm not overselling it and being like, hey, you got the number one quarterback in the portal or whatever, but I think you got, for what the market was out there and for, again, the intersection of the market and what you want to do, I don't know that you could have hoped to have gotten a better piece than Thomas Castellanos. So I think he's as ready-made to run this offense as anybody that you're going to find. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like. Obviously, a guy that's going to allow you to take advantage of some of the, the number mismatch that Gus and that style of offense likes to try to create and likes to get people's eyes to, look at some of the what Jimbo used to call it, eye candy or whatever, and make you a half a step slow. And all of a sudden you've got a super talented runner attacking weaknesses of the defense. And he checks that box. So again, I'm not saying he's good, is perfect. But I think it's a nice piece that fits with the offense that your offense coordinator is going to want to run as well as anybody out there.
Man, I totally agree. I'm under no illusions that this team is going to be like an ACC championship type team next year. They're trying to get back on track, and they needed help in a lot of different positions. I think the staff that you hired on defense is better than the staff you hired on offense, and thus it allowed you to get a higher level of defensive player in. I think because they were able to attract it. Obviously, more guys, not all of them, but some were able to follow, Tony and them from Nebraska, and you needed a lot of different pieces on offense, and we're able to go out and get them, and those guys certainly aren't cheap. I think if you're FSU, my hope is that they've had to talk to Castellanos look, dude, you can't play in the NFL, at least not quarterback. You come here, it's carries. We are getting you primarily for your legs and, occasionally some play action passing. But, your numbers when you throw the ball more than 25 times a game, they're not great. So it is a, spread option type offense. I'm not going to say full option, but it's obviously – Gus has some wing T roots. He's not going to run a wing T, obviously, in Tallahassee. But I like the fit. I mean, this offense, you look throughout Malzahn's tenure, once in a while he kind of gets a little like bright idea he's going to have a passing offense, and then almost always sucks.
Yep.
Going back, I remember very clearly, this is 10 years ago now, I think. Hold on. When was this kid a quarterback? Remember Sean White out of recruit. Class of 2011. So we were going out to the openings. This is 13. No, it's Pensacola. No, this would have been later. When was this? So this was at U School, or I think this was class of 14, or was it class of 15? Remember Sean White? So he ended up winning the Elite 11 MVP, and I was sitting next to this kid, and I never tell kids where to go to school. It's not my place. But I was sitting next to him on the flight back from the opening, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to go to Auburn." In my head, I'm like, "That is really stupid." I mean, just because like you don't fit at all. Like, but he's like, "Yeah, Auburn's going to turn into a passing offense, a lot of drop back. We're going to throw the ball out to receivers." I'm like, they just played for the national title with a corner named Nick Marshall, and almost beat FSU doing that. I'm like, bro, you're nothing like that. Like, do you see what Malzahn has success with? Thus, like Castellanos is almost polar opposite of that. Like he is like you said, Mike recruited him to play running back in Tallahassee. He can't play quarterback in Mike's old offense. In the new offense, he can play quarterback because what the quarterback is asked to do is different. Obviously, I like the fit. I mean, health concerns certainly. Like he's not the biggest guy. You got to hope he doesn't get banged up. Brock Glenn is not nearly as athletic as Castellanos is. So if he's your backup, I mean that is going to matter. But if he can stay healthy for 12 games, I feel like you have to like his ability to run this Gus Malzahn offense, especially because he has experience, doing so, right? So I think there's some stuff to like here for sure with Castellanos. The running numbers are really good. I think he's got like really good balance, good patience as a runner, and the throwing is acceptable. I mean, it's not pretty, but off play action, I'm cool with it. Like this is. I don't think it gives you much of a ceiling as an offense, but I do think a healthy Castellanos provides a nice floor for, assuming the other pieces around him can step up, which I think there's some chance that they can. So I think I kind of like you said, given what the market was. I mean, Auburn's been planning for 25 for what, 3 years? Not a lot of portal stuff for them through 2 years. Heavy spending in high school. And they look around, they're like, shit, Jackson Arnold is like the best we can do. Now, maybe Jackson Arnold, I mean, can absolutely be a stud for you, but I mean, he got benched at Oklahoma for a true freshman and did not have a great year. This was not a great quarterback year. I mean, Carson Beck, when you talk with Miami, obviously probably, if healthy, the best quarterback in the portal, but A, is he healthy? And B, like that's not a guy you can go after because you can't pass protect for him, given what your current offensive line situation is in Tallahassee, at least not in my opinion. It doesn't fit your offense either. So, I mean, Mateer, you weren't really going to be in the conversation for Mateer, I don't think. He would fit this offense great, by the way. But, I mean, his coordinator was literally going, to Oklahoma. And he probably throws a little bit too well, just meaning he was going to have better options. But he didn't use those options. He just followed his OC to Oklahoma. He's going to be the starter there. So, I don't really know who else you'd want to go get if you're going to be a very run-based offense. I think I like it. I'm rambling now. I apologize.
No, I mean, for our listeners, I'm not trying to be grand or whatever by wearing a blazer, but I'm having to record this podcast from my parents' house because a large legacy media company just doesn't believe that I should ever have internet again. Evidently, I'm like 5 days without internet, which is great. I'm not going to put a company on blast, but that's pain in the rear. And recording this from my childhood bedroom that I think at one point was a patio or something like that, and the insulation has never been a strength of this room. So cold day in Atlanta, and I'm going to put a jacket on. Anyway, no, I think it's a good fit. I think it allows. Look, if you go and you get somebody like Squirrel that can stretch the field, you have a piece like Hakeem that you want to continue to develop and use the body type that is a legitimate, true NFL type wide receiver, and then you add a Deuce Robinson to this. Yeah, you've got some nice things. Those times that you do put the ball in the air, you can create some mismatches and you can create some real shot plays and some opportunity for you. Within that offense. I agree with you. Gus Malzahn's at his best when he's, doing his strength, when he's, he's got a uniquely talented offensive mind. And Nick Marshall was had his own little cult following there, certainly as an athlete, and was a great player out of Georgia, real good basketball player if I remember correctly as well, but a guy that had no NFL, again, any NFL aspirations that guy had was playing, wide receiver or a different position other than quarterback. And granted, that team had some luck, the like of which I don't know another college football team will ever have.
I would like some of that, please.
Yes, give me the double touch against Georgia that somehow just falls into a wide receiver's hands. But
do you remember who the safety was who ran into the other guy?
For Georgia?
Yes. It's a guy FSU recruited, hyphenated name. Dad was real involved in the recruitment.
Okay. I know who you're talking about. I don't remember the name.
First name Josh.
Oh, yes. The kid from Valdosta, Harvey Clemens or whatever.
Yeah.
I do remember that. Yeah. So, anyways.
And then a kick six.
Yeah, and then a kick six. Then one of the craziest plays of all of college football.
Were we in Tallahassee for that? Or were we in Gainesville for the kick six?
I believe that. Yeah, I remember specifically watching actually our old friend Chuck Oliver. I was in his living room for the Auburn, Georgia one, but I do believe you're right about that. So let's move to running back. I think we've given an exhaustive and perhaps too long of opinions on the quarterback position. And while this show is really going to be about guys that you had in the portal per se,
yeah,
not bad. Yeah, you got. I'm not trying to oversell it, but just if I put my FSU fan hat on, I don't think I'm being anything but 100% honest when I tell you I'm as excited about Chroma as any offensive player that signed for Florida State since Jimbo Fisher was the head coach. I mean, you've probably got to go back to, not saying he's going to be this or comparing him, but Cam Akers, Dalvin, somebody like that. I mean, this is a truly special player who was playing against good competition, who plays for a real, big boy program in Lee, and is an incredible talent. And I think we'd be a disservice to our audience to talk about the running back position and not talk about Chroma. So, not saying anything's going to be given to him. There's a lot of talented players in there. Roydell Williams is working his rear end off to have as good of a year as possible. Jalen Lucas, I think, will be a big part of your offense. I think Mekhi Danzy is as talented as anybody as you have on your roster. I think there's a lot of really good pieces here, but I think you got a special player coming in from Lee County.
I completely agree. I mean, I know you and I were texting, and where was I? It was in Indiana at the time, on the way to the Big Ten title game, and I was like, man, he's not Darren McFadden, but like there's like some, and I don't know that the top end is the same. Like he's not Darren McFadden, but like the kind of like slashing running style for a guy who's a little more upright at times and is really effective with it. Like I think the guy's core strength to throw people off him like this, is. I guess like McFadden was not a super low runner. He was more of a high cut, tall guy, and that's kind of who I see. And saying like poor man's Darren McFadden is not a knock. Like Darren McFadden is one of like the best running backs we have seen in the sport of college football in a long time, and I think he's a really good player. So I mean, you get him. I'm excited about this team's ability to run the football with all these weapons. And I know this sounds like it sounded last year, and I don't know the logic last year sucked. Just because last year didn't turn out like we thought doesn't mean that you have to just trash everything, right? I don't think. It'd be good if they were a little bit closer to what the staff thought they were going to be, actually what we thought they were going to be. We should own the take. But I mean, there's a lot of interesting pieces. And Malzahn does have a history of using very small guys too, like you mentioned, Lucas and Danzy's not that small, but like Lucas and Danzy are sort of like, oh shoot, we false stepped, and
exactly.
Now like they're out the gate. Like he does have a real history of utilizing players like that very effectively, and yet he'll also force feed a guy. I mean, if you play any kind of college fantasy, like typically a Malzahn running back is extremely good bet because he's going to get 20 carries a game, the A back, if he's actually that good. Now, maybe there's an argument that on this roster, maybe there's 3 or 4 guys who are similar and they want to rotate and do that. But if you got a guy that emerges, I was also going to give that guy the ball a lot, at least based on his history. And I think it is appropriate, especially you didn't take it back because you like the backs you got on this roster. You took a tight end, you took a couple of receivers, took a quarterback, took 4 linemen. We'll talk about that in a second. But I'm extremely excited about Crumlin.
Yep.
He's going to play.
Dude is a special type athlete with a core and lower body strength that is just different. So, tight end again. We're not this isn't a pure state proposition or a propaganda by any means, but really talented. Before we started, I mentioned to Bud that Randy Pittman and the center that you got from Wake are probably the 2 players that I'm the most excited about. So just for purposes of full disclosure, from the portal, those are 2 guys. I think Pittman's not a carbon copy by any means, but there are a lot of Jaheim Bell parts to his game, and I think he's doesn't maybe have quite the lower body strength that Jaheim could occasionally just overwhelm people with and absolutely surprise you by how forceful he could be, but probably wants to be involved in blocking a little bit more than Jaheim did. And I think you got a really nice piece here. I do.
That is probably the one part of his game that I was like very I've kind of come full circle on him. Not 360, like I've come like 270 on Randy Pittman. So when he was coming up, when he committed to FSU back in the day, people were like crazy excited about him. I was like, guys, like he's a little bit sawed off. He's not the biggest dude. He's a good athlete. He's not Brock Bowers. Okay. And like, if you're going to get me really, really excited about a high school tight end prospect, I need to have that like crazy upside. And I think what you got here in Pittman, like, and it was just pretty obvious. Like, he's a guy who looks like he grew first, like one of the early developmental guys. He didn't have that much more room to grow and develop physically. But yet he's a dude who is just a productive, good football player. But I am surprised at how much effort he gives in blocking, because he was always more like, I think I'm kind of like a receiver type thing. And okay, you're more of like an H-back. And I like the fit here a lot in this Gus Malzahn offense. He is an athletic dude. I think he can do some stuff with the ball in his hands. They go to him in some pretty critical situations. I had UCF money line live. I was live betting the game against TCU. It's like, okay, like TCU really had to stop. Like TCU's up big, but they also haven't actually stopped UCF yet. So I think UCF's got a shot to come back here if they can get some stops themselves. And I mean, they just kept going to Pittman too. He was very like a guy that they would depend upon in critical situations. Now, you could say, hey, he's kind of got to be schemed open, but I don't necessarily think that's true. Not always. And like a lot of this stuff that you're going to run, how many true dropbacks is UCF doing per game? Not many. Okay. And I think the take of Castellanos tells you probably a pretty good indication that you're not going to do a whole lot of just like drop back. I mean, third and obvious, got to. Hopefully you avoid some third and obvious, but this is a guy off play action against a backer. He can win, I think, one-on-one against a lot of these ACC backers. And he also seems to have enough feel to get open against zone and sit down and then just not wander. And I think this is a good take. I do. Like, is he going to be a superstar? Probably not. Is he going to be a draft pick? I don't know. I mean, the length will certainly be an issue there if you want to play in the league. Like, if you want to be Brock Bowers size, you better be really, really athletic. But I think he can be an extremely effective college player for you. And this roster needs some dudes who are bankable. If we look back and do the post-mortem on some of this transfer portal last year, in my opinion, one of the mistakes they made was trying to too finely thread the needle between potential, but also like you need that guy to actually play for you and be good this year. I'll take a TJ Ferguson. Does he have the upside long term? Sure, if you can get it out for him, but he wasn't ready to play for you last year because he sucked. I mean, like he didn't have any indication he was any good at Bama. You liked him out of high school with your eval. I think your evals have been okay at times, and like this year, this feels like a good take as far as it's not a potential take. We know this guy can play at this level and can help this team right now. So I like that a lot, actually.
Yep. I think I'm excited for what you got, Randy. Offensive line. I mean, look, you got two.
Douglas.
I'm sorry.
Biscuit's back.
Yes, Mark Easton. Good point. You did bring in Mark Easton as well. A guy that when I talk to people who I trust to evaluate talent, said that they saw a little bit of an uptick in his blocking ability, which is, I mean, look, if Mark Easton wants to play on Sundays, that's the dude. You need to turn into a monster blocker. That's what your frame is. part of the reason, what is it? Is it Fight Song? Is that what that play's called? I mean, part of the reason that works so well is because Keeson Douglas kind of looks like a tackle.
Mm-hmm.
So you just certainly want that part of his game to continue to develop. Talented kid. I remember like talking to players last year. Always a guy that if you asked him, hey, if you're putting together a 3-on basketball team, who you get? Marquison's probably on 80% of the kids' teams because he's got good feet, athletically gifted. Yeah, I mean, it's a flyer if you want to call it that. I don't want to sell it as a whole lot more than that, but no, it's a nice, if you. I like Jackson West a lot. I like his work ethic, but you're replacing Marquise and Douglas and this guy with Jackson and Kyle Morlock and some of the other pieces at tight end. Marquise and Douglas certainly has a body that has an ability to be, give you more Sunday-like play. So,
and he's an older guy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we said it on this show. Like, we're not going to hide from it. Florida State thought he was lazy. Florida State did not think he had good, like eating habits. He was consistently like heavy, like too heavy for the athleticism that he had. Needed to work harder. Needed to have more focus and more intensity. If he's got that this time around, maybe there's something there. Like that was the issue. They would pretty clearly tell anybody who asked that. So I think the fact that they took him back, you could read it two ways. One, were they desperate? I mean, I don't think they know Kenny and that staff. I think at the very least, it's like, hey, has he improved in some of these areas behind the scenes? Is he doing more of the lonely work now? Is he doing, what's asked consistently? I think that's probably, something that's, I don't think you take him if you don't get at least some positive indication from Dillingham and those guys. I would guess that they made a call there, and maybe he can have a bigger role. That'd be cool. Or maybe he can just be a good role player and get a degree. I don't think he's an NFL guy unless he improves a ton. But again, you're not going 12-0 would be great. You're not trying to go 12-0 with this roster, I don't think. Like, if all these teams do internal projections, doesn't mean they're always right. I don't think anybody on this staff is like, yeah, we're 12-0. But can he help you comfortably make a bowl game? Maybe. Yeah, I think so. Like, it's a positive step in the right direction towards, rebuilding after the fall off, potentially. I don't know. Maybe they see greatness in it. I don't, but like you said, it's a flyer.
Yep. Yeah, you get these two kids and you pair him with a kid that you do see greatness in with Amari Williams. Now, whether he's ultimately a tight end or a defensive end, we'll see. But a very special player in Landon Thomas, who has the chance to be a very special player in his own right. And I think you have reason to feel, pretty good about the tight end position. This helps give you some certainty.
1,000,000%. You want to talk a little receiver?
Let's do talk receiver.
How excited are you when you got Deuce?
Very. I mean, I think it's I think it's a great fit for scheme. I think it's a guy that you can create opportunities. I think it's a guy that can stretch the field. I think it's a guy that can get mismatches with linebackers and safeties and pick up, what I would call moderate chunk plays for you. From a macro perspective, I think he helped to give you some validation in the class too. I mean, because he wasn't one of your first commitments, but he was in the first half, or at least it felt that way to me as I try to think back as to the chronological order of how this all played out. And my mind betrays me further and further I get into this process at times, so I'm not always perfect at it. But I do think that he helped a lot with perception. I think he's a big time player. And I think he's going to be a large part of your offense from snap one.
I think he's going to be featured quite a bit. I mean, an interesting fit in this offense. Obviously we talked about, like, obviously pairing up with Castellanos is an interesting choice for a receiver, but a guy who is very familiar to Florida State, obviously his dad, Dominic, played and was an excellent player for you. Had one of the most important catches, I think, in the Florida State rivalry ever, obviously. Not the PK Sam catch, but the catch right before that, actually.
4th and 14, 1.0. Yeah. Well, yes. I'd like to talk to Dominic about that just because that was my
let's have him on the show.
That was my apex of childhood fandom, and anybody that's heard the clips of the Gator the Gator
The
radio
best.
team, both the 4th and 14 and the
God.
PK Sam is just incredible. And no, that was a 4th and 14 that I thought game was over. This, a certain vintage of Chris Ricks was known to throw a ball over the middle that would be run back the other way for 6 points. And I'll be very honest with you. That's what I thought was going to happen. But Ricks threw one of the best balls of his career, and Dominic Robinson, who in his own right, I mean, I remember, I've talked a lot about my recruiting fandom during that window of time. And I remember, Dominic Robinson, the father, was one of the few players that you would hear about as a junior. There were still those certain class of kids of, 5 to 10 kids in each class that you would hear about. And I think Dominic was the, number 1 DB in that class and one of the top 5 kids in the class or whatever. Was a massive recruit and, changed positions, but ended up having some very significant contributions to Florida State during his time there.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I think he's got some, like, of the guys you took, I think he has the best combination of proven that he actually can play at this level, and also there is some additional upside there that maybe can be unlocked. And some of these guys, like, okay, that guy's going to probably like go pro in something other than sports, but he can help you this year.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some of these guys, I'm like, okay, I have no idea if he can actually play, but I see the attributes that suggest maybe this, like, that he actually could hit big. D-Rob is probably the one to me that has both. Like, we know what he can do, but he's the one I have real hope for, that they're like, there's a lot more they can unlock potentially. So I'm excited to see what they can do with him. If that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's talk Squirrel White out of Knoxville. Look, man, if Squirrel White is healthy, you played a blinder here, in my opinion. I mean, you've got a super talented kid who moves in a manner that just most don't, and can stick his foot in the ground and explode in a route against a defensive back where all of a sudden he's 2.5 steps behind the guy. He's just a uniquely gifted kid who, you can turn on the tape at Tennessee from not this year as much or the year prior and see a lot of very explosive plays. Again, they have hit before on taking flyers on guys in the portal. And this could very well be it as well. It's a talented guy. I do think there's some look. Nobody on your roster. If Squirrel White's healthy, nobody on your roster moves like Squirrel. And I'm not trying to suggest otherwise. But
and
there
if
are
he was known to be healthy, let's be real here. You're not getting him.
Mm-hmm. Possible.
Like, he would go to a place that doesn't have Thomas Castellanos as the quarterback if you knew that he was like good to go.
Yep.
He would go to a place that throws the ball more often and better. So, I mean, I think that's the combo that allows you to get him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the unknown on the health.
Certainly, I imagine it played a role. I'll put it that way. And look, we'll just see what happens. Again, if this kid's healthy and you pair him with Deuce and you pair him with Hakeem and some of the other pieces in that room that you're trying to develop, and we've already said if he's healthy 7 times, but if it's right, this kid's as good of a piece for this type of offense as you could hope to have. He both gives you the ability to stretch the field, and he gives you the ability to do, not to sound super cliche, it's self-explanatory. He can stretch it vertically and side to side. And by that, I mean, he can run you the 9 route, and he can do all the stuff that you do side to side where you try to get linebackers' eyes to be lazy or to guess or to take the first half false step. And all of a sudden, it's an end around for 19 yards. Squirrel is, if it works here, it's a brilliant get and will play a large part in, not being one of the worst offenses in the country like you were last year.
Completely agree. I mean, it's you're trying to hit explosive plays. That's really like what the goal is, and you're getting the most out of your touches. Do you want to guess what UCF's record was last year when it threw more than 25 passes?
Take it away, bud.
You see 0-1, 0-2, 0-3, 0-4, 0-5.
How many of those were KJ Jefferson games? I'm just curious.
I
Not that you have that in
believe
front of you, or
I can actually pull that up. Let's see here. That was obviously like they were really, really disappointed with what they got in Jefferson. Like they thought they had, like in the portal, they thought they had something they got on campus. They're like, okay, we got to work with this a little bit. Let me see. Of those Jefferson games, so only the first two. So 0-2 with Jefferson and 0-3 without.
Okay.
This is a pretty consistent trend I've been looking up with this UCF thing. Like the drop back passing part of this offense is bad. The running part is really good. If you're staying on schedule and you're having play action passing, you can be really, really deadly. If they get you to drop back, I don't think this passing concept stuff is very good at all. And part of that, I think, is there's a word I'm looking for. It's like, of course it's not, because the quarterbacks you're recruiting for this don't fit that. You know, I mean, to me, if you look at it, but it's pretty consistent. I guess they threw it 35 times last year against Kent State, but they won 56-6, and that was maybe the worst FBS team in our lifetimes. The prior year, 0-1, 0-2, 0-3, 0-4, 0-5, 0-6.
Okay.
So basically 25 or more passes for this offense is going to be a loss, at least based on the UCF tenure. Now, at Auburn, it's a little different. You have a little bit better players at Auburn, all around. And adjusting to the new league in the Big 12 was difficult. Gus got there, 22? So they beat 0-1. They did about 36 times against Florida Atlantic in 2022. That's like 36 passes against FSU is wild. Or against FAU is wild. So 1-1, 2-1, 2-2, 3-2, 4-2. So the trend actually does not hold back when they were in the American Conference.
Okay.
It's actually, I believe they had a winning record in no, but it closer back when they were still in the American. In the with their adjustment to the Big 12, I think they realized like the Big 12 was a lot better than the American was. So I don't think that throwing 25 plus times with Malzahn is going to be automatic L in Tallahassee. 30 times, I think you're probably pretty close. Like with Castellanos, probably pretty close to it. But 25 is probably too stringent, given that Florida State's not moving and having to adjust and learn a new league. But yeah, I mean, it's back to the squirrel point. Not going to be a high volume guy, but he's going to be a guy that, like, you, if right, he's someone who you hope can take it the distance every time he touches it. There can't be a lot of wasted touches because you're not going to get the ball as a receiver.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. The one kid, though, for UCF, he would have like 12 catches a game at times, but that's if you got a real stud. I don't know if you have one guy in this offense who's going to catch the ball 12 times a game.
Yeah.
But
no, I mean, you hope to maximize the times that you can get Squirrel the ball, and you also hope to, have him be a guy that defense coaches and defense coordinators have to account for when he's out there. And if he's right, he absolutely is that. Let's see. Anybody else before we move to line? Am I? No, you got the 6'7" kid, Scott.
Oh, the JUCO.
Yeah, they're excited about. I mean, that's a unique body type and a guy who. I mean, he's 6'7" wide receiver, has the ability to create some mismatches. We don't really need to get too forensic with it. I mean, he's a guy that can go up, do a lot of things that Johnny did at times, and it's kind of where the sport's going in general. And it's a nice piece to have. See what it means from there.
Completely. Let me see here. Another commit that's really important. Matt Lewis at Congruity. Guy absolutely crushes it. You guys can check out Congruity, all your HR and payroll solutions. Also, if you need healthcare, big time there. Matt actually sent me an email about this the other day. I did the read on the last show. I'm on the wrong email account. That's great. But I do want to give you guys the accurate information. So they actually just partnered with a new healthcare company, which is awesome. And if your business has between 40 and 200 employees, it might really be a great time for you to talk to Matt Lewis, because they saved a bunch of money in healthcare for a couple clients so far, and a couple happy listeners as well. So hit up Matt Lewis, hit up Congruity, all your HR and payroll and healthcare solutions you might need. Let's optimize your business with Congruity. Hit their link in the show notes. Just go on your app, hit it, or on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, we really appreciate it. All right. Let's talk line, man. I'm excited.
I think I already mentioned what I think about the center. I think Luke is a really nice piece that is going to, with all due respect to Maurice Smith, give you a significant upgrade at that position. And again, Mo, they brought in a lot of guys to replace him, and Mo kept his job. And I give Maurice credit for that. But you can be better at the center position, and I think you will be significantly better at the center position. So we'll start inside and work our way out there. But I think the kid from Wake that you got is a massive piece for everybody feeling a little bit better about the offense next year.
I also want to give these guys some credit, just on like the big picture, and let's go individual in a second. But man, I mean, you look at this. If they wanted Herb Hand, they could have had Herb Hand immediately. And like I know personally with my sources that he was not their first choice. I'm not saying he's a bad hire. In fact, like Malzahn's very familiar with him, but we know that they had other guys ahead of him and struck out. I was worried about this transfer recruiting class for O-line based on how long it took, to get the offensive line coach hired. Okay. I'm like pretty pleased, I think, with what they did overall, given there's not a lot of absolute studs out there on the offensive line class in the portal this year, but I think there's some decent, can play a little bit type guys. And dude, Pettibone, we saying it Pettibone? It's not Pettibone, right? Pettibone.
I think it's Pettibone. Yeah.
Okay. This guy's a good player.
Mm-hmm.
It's people were fretting when you did not get the UCF center, and I'm not sure that Luke Pettibone's not better. Actually, it's if you look at it, I think the general theme with 3 of the 4 linemen, and we'll say Pettis for different. I think he is generally different. I don't see a lot of just absolute screw ups by the 3 linemen you took. And to me, Pettibone's the best. He's an athletic guy. He moves laterally well. I think he maintains his posture very well when he's moving. He can drive a little bit, not the biggest guy, but he does. I think he understands that he's not huge and he needs to use his leverage. Well, as a former wrestler, I know you'll certainly appreciate that. It seems to really know what he's doing. And I like this take a lot. I think he's going to be a better player for you than Maurice was. Now, part of that is just Maurice could never stay healthy. So, obviously, knock on wood that Luke can stay healthy. But he was already one of the better centers in the ACC. We talked about proof of concept guys. Is he going to be an NFL player? I don't know. I don't think it's super likely, but I don't think it's a 0% chance. Of the guys you got on the O-line, he's probably the most likely. Again, let's say Pettis for kind of the other side, because Pettis is the one that's way different than me than the other 3. But I like this take a lot. I think you're going to be immediately better at center. It allows some of your young centers to potentially have a year to develop in the system if they can. You got to be pretty excited about this, right?
I think it's a big step, and you can attack the portal in different ways, and you can value having as sure an idea as to what someone's going to be based off what you've seen elsewhere and production elsewhere. And I think Luke checks those boxes. And we could be redundant and talk about every player that we're discussing being healthy, but if this kid's healthy, you've got as good of an idea as to what you're going to get from center play as I think you do any position on the offensive side of the ball.
Completely agree. Who do you want to go to next? We have you want to talk Medley or do you want to talk Gunnar Hansen?
Let's do Medley first, and I'm going to have to give this to you. I'm not playing dumb or whatever else. I'm honestly not super familiar with this kid.
So he's more athletic than I thought he would be. Kind of has skinnier legs, can get out and move. Not the most physical dude when you watch him, but I'm not saying he's soft. He's a little more finesse of a guard than I think you would assume when you look at him. Seems to be in the right place. I mean, clearly, they're very familiar with him, and they went after 2 kids from UCF. You end up getting one of them, and this is one of the guys. So I think they like what they have. He's a guy I would expect to come in and probably be a starter for you. Played fairly well. Again, not a dominant guy. Could be more physical for sure. but doesn't seem to whiff a lot. And I think that's important. Just getting in the way of somebody with some of these runs that are real quick hitting in this Gus Malzahn offense, I think is pretty important. So I like the length here of Medley. He's an interesting, prospect as far as his body type as a guard. Can get out and pull some. Obviously, UCF, does like to pull, excuse me, a good bit. And I'm excited. Again, if you told me that you needed to take 4 linemen and you think probably are counting on 4 of the 4 to start, but I don't know that that's a great thing. But if you don't get at least 3 of the 4 to start, you probably got problems. I think he's a guy who is likely to be able to start for you. And a dude that the staff is quite familiar with, has some decent athleticism to him. I like it. Relative to like where you are as a program right now. Like he wouldn't, I mean, he's not going to Ohio State, but that's not where you are right now. You're trying to rebuild.
Yeah, Hansen and Pettis. Look, you went out and got guys who have a well-documented career playing in the SEC and having nice games against nice competition. Doesn't mean that they're going to be first team all ACC tackles for you. Pettis is Pettis, if right, has the ability to compete for some stuff like that. But Hansen, I mean, look, tackle has become the premium position that we all knew it was going to become as this sport evolves in its 2.0 or 3.0 phase, is however you want to look at it. And I think that's a solid prospect that you could go out and get, plug in, again, health, blah blah blah. But if you got a real good idea as to what that kid can give you, and that's instant tackle play. And of the pieces, I think you like the pieces on the inside. I think, some grouping of Leonard, Rizzi, Ferguson. I mean, one of those guys will step up for you and be a decent player. I think Lucas Simmons is still a year away. I think Lucas Simmons' ceiling is through the roof, but you always knew that was a raw kid who unfortunately lost a year because of some health issues that he had nothing he could do about it. But a guy that needed time playing the sport and unfortunately lost a year of that time playing the sport. So I think Lucas is, still a year away. And some of the other tackle prospects are still, I think Manasseh Atiti has a really bright future, but that's not somebody that you want to start for you right now. Jonathan Daniels, cut, paste, ditto. So this is a big get.
So I think Hansen is like pretty dependable for you. Like should be in the right spot, has played a lot of football, was in primarily like a somewhat similar offense actually at Vandy to what Malzahn's going to run. Vandy, when right, was heavy run. It's basically spread option. Pavia is certainly going to go pro in something other than sports in terms of, and granted, he's maybe just play a million years college football because he got the ruling. And, by the time he runs out of eligibility, maybe you just play college football for 20 years. That's, if that's what it is. But a dude who I think like they liked, has a little bit of nastiness to him. Physically, I don't think he's special, but I don't think he's not a total stiff, at least not to me. I think this is the second best lineman you took, and it is hard to find good tackles out there. Like obviously, as you know, and his staff knows, everybody in college football knows, it is really hard. I think that is a good take for this team, a guy who is probably pretty dependable to come in and start. Pettis is interesting. So very up and down at Ole Miss. I do know some guys who coach at Ole Miss. I know some people who really plug in at Ole Miss, and they were like, look, he's huge. The technique is really lazy. The habits have got to get more mature. If he's going to get something out of it, like he's not a dependable player for us. He's not some guy we can count on. Now, that could change to Tallahassee, right? This could be his money year. If Micah Pettis takes stuff seriously and can stay healthy, because he also got hurt before that Georgia game in 2023. But I mean, if he takes it seriously, these next 7 months for him are going to matter a whole lot as far as whether he gets a paycheck or whether he's just a guy who's like, hey, he was big. But I mean, he's like the coordination, when you watch him, I don't really see it. He's just big. Like, I don't think there's a lot there right now. But part of that is going to be kind of like what we talked about with Marquise. Are you taking care of your body? Are you in shape? Like maybe you're more athletic if you're, 6'7", 350 is huge. Does he need to be 350? Maybe 330 makes a little more sense for him. depending on if they can slim him down some. But the good reps are pretty damn good. And I will say, like, he was getting some starter reps for Ole Miss before he got hurt in 23. And when he got hurt before that Georgia game, those guys were saying the same thing back then, but it was also like, we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it was his foot that he hurt, right? In 23, I'm trying to remember.
Yep.
I remember this being like, remember Ole Miss came into that game ranked. And I remember just talking to some people who I think know Ole Miss program well. Foot injury. Okay, yeah. Let me look here. When did he? So yeah, October 27th. That was 24. He definitely got hurt before the Georgia game in 23. I remember this pretty clearly because it was a big deal. Okay, here we go. Pettis suffers foot injury out against Georgia. And they were already down. I think he was starting because somebody else had got hurt as well. But it was in the Wednesday practice before the Georgia game. So not exactly like good timing. I feel like this FSU team actually had some of that. So he played in every game. He had started for, I think, 5 games in a row, entering that UGA game in late October. And the backup got destroyed by Georgia. It was like really an immediate and obvious issue. So he's a guy who has been counted on to play in the SEC before with mixed results.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like, he does have some upside. I think he clearly has the most upside out of anybody in this offensive line transfer portal class they took, but he also has the lowest floor by far. Now, I wonder if some of the apparent lack of athleticism, and the guy does not look to be in shape, at least based on this year in Ole Miss. How much of that is like you're coming off a foot injury? Big guys balloon when they get like foot and ankle injuries, man. Like, it. Talk to any strength coach. Like, so if he can come in and be healthy and really work hard this offseason, I think there's some actual chance there. It's just that's kind of he's very Marquiston to me, but he's actually started in the SEC, whereas Marquiston has never done that.
Yep. Look, I realize every part of the program is going to get questioned when you go 2-10. I still think you're not misguided at all to think that you've got a really elite strength and conditioning program. Now, granted, we're talking about Ole Miss. That doesn't, I think very highly of Josh Torrance. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that he's twice as good as the guy at Ole Miss or something like that. But I'm still saying that I think you've got a really good program there. That I'd say your strength. I don't know every program at all, but your strength program is connected with all the other aspects of your program as much as I'd say any program that I'm aware of. I certainly have a lot of friends at Ole Miss, echo similar to what you say. I do say that a guy whose opinion that I value a lot said that early in 23, Pettis looked like a player that could potentially end up being a first-round pick. Doesn't mean that he was there then.
They were counting on him. He was starting for him.
Yeah, he if this kid can get healthy and if this kid can see the money emojis, then I think you've got something. I also I don't need you getting thrown out of games, but I kind of love it when you've got one dude on your offensive line that is constantly throwing punches at people and stuff like that. I mean, this guy does not play finesse tackle. He plays like, I'm going to try to kill you every time, on every snap. And you need some of that. Florida State's, all due respect to Darius and Byers and dude, this guy plays like it is a physical contest, and I'm going to try to kill you on every snap, and that's something you desperately need in this room right now. So I love that
completely. It's when I was watching these guys, I watched them back to back, and I watched Pettis first, and I was like, okay, and he's like nothing like the other 3 guys you took at all. It's just very different. You're right. The good is really, really good, and he'll finish it. And then the bad is like so much so that it's almost Pettis is both the guy who I would be least surprised to see drafted off this group, and also the guy least surprised to see not starting. Like, I think the range of outcomes is that wide depending on what happens in like the next 7 months.
Yeah, that's
which
fair.
Cool. You got 3 dudes who I think we know are almost certainly going to start for you, who are very dependable, and one guy who, I mean, what's the downside? He's actually started in SEC for a good SEC team, an SEC team that won the Sugar Bowl over Penn State. I mean, in 23. Yeah, in 23.
Mm-hmm.
So if he can get back to right, like I think this offensive line could take a significant jump and should be fairly competitive as an offensive line in most games you play. Now, if Bama totally reloads on the D line, maybe we don't see that week 1. I don't know. Part of that's also how much respect you have to show the receivers, how much respect you have to show the passing game. But I think you have to feel really good about what you're able to do coming off a 2-10 season when you didn't have an offensive line coach hired for like a month. And this is much better. I thought they would do overall.
100%.
Given like some of the guys early on, like, okay, they're after him and went elsewhere. This is pretty nice.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. No, I give the staff credit. This is way better than I thought was going to take place. Certainly, if you had gotten 5 minutes of me with the true serum in, post Florida game or something like that, this window went way better. And we'll see how it translates, see what it means. Even to a lesser extent with the portal, but kind of like in high school recruiting, you see the good in players. You see the tape, you see the highlights, you see the things that you want to see, and you mentally project them. But I think we've had a pretty honest conversation about what's out there, and solid. I'd give this overall class of 88, something like that. I mean, I think
I think so.
I think you did really well here, and probably more like a 94 when I graded against expectations. So it's a
You
good.
saw we're getting the
solid
schedule
addition.
come out on Monday.
I did not see that. That's great.
Very cool.
I will say that the pictures of the snow gave me a much better idea as to why the spring game's canceled. When you see that 45% of the field is an active construction zone, you're like, oh yeah. Well, I can see where maybe the spring game's not going to take place.
That does make quite a bit of sense. Let me see here. So, FanDuel put up win totals for several of FSU's opponents. Bama's 8.5, heavily juiced over. Basically, just read it as 9. Clemson 9.5, basically even juice. Colorado, we're not playing Colorado, but Colorado is 6.5. Florida 6.5, which is interesting. I think a lot of people are way over their skis on UF. And if Lagway hits, then they absolutely will be justified. And if he's merely very good, maybe less so. Do you play Louisville next year? Do not. Okay. Louisville's 8.5. Miami 8.5, juice over North Carolina, and that is the last opponent on the schedule. But looking at
Florida
this,
State a number?
The what?
Did they give Florida State a number?
They did not yet. They did, no FSU, no Va Tech, not all the SEC teams either. Like there's no Ole Miss. LSU's got a number. A&M doesn't have a number. It's sort of a weird mix. Oregon's got a number, 10.5. Ohio State's got 10.5. USC's got 7. Indiana has 8.5. That's interesting. I don't know if that magic lasts, but
I think the number that you're looking for is 850-759-4300. That's the number to make reservations at Charlie Park, Bud. Charlie Park Restaurant and Rooftop Bar right there by the AC Hotel. As cool of a place as there is in Tallahassee. Probably pretty cool to go up there tonight and look at snow all around Cascade Park if there is still any left. And no, all of Matt Thompson properties are fantastic, and we're fortunate to be able to partner with Matt and his team for as long as we have. But Charlie Park, Madison Social, the Social Kitchen that I've fallen in love with up there on the north side, and obviously Township as well. And I believe they just opened up a place downtown as well, whose name slips my mind. But for the Table Restaurant Group, big thanks for their historic support of the Nolecast.
Absolutely, man. So I'm excited about this team. I think that there is a lot more proven production at some of the spots than you had last year, and less upside potentially, right? Like I think that's sort of the trade-off. But if you're Norvell, like you're like in Alford, like you're in save your job mode clearly, and you can't follow up 2-10 with something very speculative, and you need to make sure you get back to winning ways. And I think this class should give you a chance to do that. And I think probably will most likely Castellanos has got to stay healthy. Obviously, he's been dinged throughout his career a good bit. Like the guy runs a lot, has to run a lot. That's the reason he's in there. But he also kind of gets nicked up, and that's probably my number one concern coming out of this is how much are you able to work Brock Glenn in? Can you rep two offenses, or are you just going to play on Castellanos staying healthy the whole season? Because like that has not happened throughout his career. I mean, even like back to the Halfley days at Boston College, he played 12 games, but very banged up at times. And because the guy plays hard for you when he's out there, he's definitely a warrior for you. So I'm curious to see what they do with that. Certainly better running backs in Tallahassee than Boston College has had. So maybe a little more carries for those guys if you can. Maybe some more runs for Castellanos where he's not getting whacked. Who knows? But I'm excited to see what you got here. This is going to be very new and different.
Bud, appreciate you letting me pop in here. This has always been fun. Great to talk with you. Appreciate you. Yeah, good conversation. So excited to see what this looks like. Kids are, I think, in day 3. When did Madrill start? I don't know. All sorts of fun going on in Tallahassee right now. I know the staff's out on the road, so I'm not sure exactly where they are in their off-season program, but good to look. We're all residents of Missouri at this point. If you're a Florida State fan, and what I mean is we're all show me, right? Like you're not gonna.
It's fair, but a lot of these guys have already shown you to different spots.
Yeah, and I do believe the conversations that you would want to hear about for a turnaround. I don't want to say significant turnaround because significant to some people means 13-1 or something like that. But I think you hear the chatter around the program that you would want to for a team that's focused, embarrassed, and hey, look, Alabama's not quite what Alabama was a year and a half ago or so, but staring at that logo all summer is still something that's going to get the best out of you. And everybody knows what game 1 is. What loosely open is a 7.5 point underdog. Yesterday, I thought I saw that. Could be wrong.
Yeah, which I mean, unless you think Bama is just going to fall off a cliff, I think 7.5 speaks to significant projected improvement in Vegas in the Nolecast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because I guarantee you that line would have been like 20 in this year, and probably more.
So, a lot
it's
of
it's 8.5. It'll probably get bet to 10 at some point, but that's not insane.
Mm-hmm. It'd be a fun off season. It'd be an interesting time, and may Usman Chroma arrive in Tallahassee healthy and ready to be a large part of the running back room. That's my final comment on the day. So
enjoy, man, and it is my sincere hope that you get Wi-Fi soon at your place. It's crazy.
At this point, they've won. I think it's humorous. I just call them and I'm like, hey, am I ever going to be a customer again? Or is it just, am I just,
Can you get Starlink?
Is it 1996 over here? I don't know.
Call Elon, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Oh, man. All right. I'll see you, dude.
Great seeing you, man.